I'm afraid to fail. I'm afraid to. I have this imposter syndrome. I didn't go out like for a year. I just literally just studied, and I was really stressed about failing my first year. As soon as I got the screening call, I thought, okay, this is my chance. I will give my all to try to land the job.
Right.
800 applicants. Somehow I landed a job there. I arrived in people like around people that had PhDs, like publishing papers, or like our professors in universities, or presenting, or doing podcasts. Okay, maybe this is about the journey and just enjoy that while you're there. My future to stay in Australia was uncertain. I just moved in with my girlfriend. I wanted to make sure I could stay with her the entire time she was there doing her PhD.
Did you have to, sort of think about how you would sustain the way you were feeling about, not failing during that time? Merci de m'avoir un choix sur le Thirstee Coconut.
That was great. Did you ever do like a welcome in a different language on Thirstee Coconut?
Remember when we did? No, not on Thirstee Coconut. It's all been in English, but I'm going to try with Camilo when I interview him in Spanish,
Awesome.
in Bolivia. Okay, so I have Nico on Thirstee Coconut. Welcome, Nico, to the show. I really appreciate you being here. I'm going to give a brief kind of outline of what I know of you, Nico, and then, of course, I'm happy for you to back that up and add to it. Nico, you are currently a partner at Echo Tango, which is a company that delivers innovative AI solutions for aviation professionals. You also consult for large organizations, including banks, on building advanced AI solutions with a strong background in software engineering and data science. And you bring a wealth of experience and expertise in the AI world to your projects. Outside of work, you have a love of outdoors, hanging out with good friends. You enjoy good foods. And I think also that you love to dabble in a little bit of, if you can, go out in the outdoors and kind of travel, sort of campsite. I know you. I think I know that about you, that you enjoy that. How did I do with the introduction? Was that okay?
You forgot about the cats. I love my cats.
Yes, and you love both of your cats, Narkia and Toki.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
Yes. And so, Nico, there's a lot about you that I want to uncover, but I've been really keen to sit you down on the show and go through a whole bunch of things about you, your background, your early years, your career, and your professional development, and also your personal development, all of the challenges and the triumphs along the way. I know your story will resonate with many Thirstee Coconuts who will inevitably watch this, those that are current and emerging. And I think that, as we embark on the conversation, lots will get people thinking about, oh, actually, that's probably something I need to do in my life, or actually, I need to probably think about considering this down the line. So is that okay with you, Nico?
Yeah, thank you for the great introduction.
Fantastic.
Definitely.
Well, let's get into it. I know that you're a native of France and Switzerland. I want to start off by just asking you what were your early years like growing up in France and Switzerland?
So I mainly live like outside of cities, in sort of the suburbs of Geneva, closer to the country, and actually at the bottom of the mountain. So I would really be more like a outdoorsy person from when I was a kid, like doing a lot of bike and going to the forest. When I was in my teenage phase, I would also do a lot of mountain biking. So that would be like sort of what I would do a lot.
Yes.
And I was a kind of a social person, thanks to my mom. Actually, she always sort of built a habit for me to invite people over or go to people at least twice a week.
Yes.
During the afternoons, and try to be very social. And that's sort of something that built with me, despite being sort of a extrovert introvert person. let's say I built this side of me which can actually really enjoy being just part with like just enjoy being with people and recharge being with the people I like. So
Yes,
that's sort of
yes,
like my early days.
yes.
Um, then you want me to continue on my uni
Yeah,
phase
yeah.
already? Or?
And I guess that was kind of you sharing a little bit about your background. But I'm also interested in what you were like as a student in high school, in particular, kind of, the tail end of
Oh,
high school. What were you a very studious person? And also, what was it like in school? And were you going to school in Switzerland, kind of your junior years in Switzerland, or was it France?
no, so it was always France up until university.
Yes.
And something how I was in school. I think up until university, um, I was not very studious actually. I just had a lot of ease at school, so I would be just good at math and all the scientific sort of topics without putting too much effort.
Yeah.
But I had to put a lot of effort on the other on the other end of the spectrum, like French, history, geography,
Interesting.
all these other sort of topics. But all the scientific one would be sort of instinctive for me, and that's just because I thought it was easier. I thought, okay, maybe I should go the scientific path without thinking too much, just as a sort of a lazy thought. But then, as I was growing, like my during my teenage phase, I realized there are some stuff that I really enjoyed doing
Yes.
that was more practical, not just like the theory in school, but actually what can I do with it?
Right.
And and I remember just going into a summer camp that my mom suggested I should do, which was actually teaching kids once every 2 days, just spending 2 hours building a website.
Oh, wow.
And that's the first time I started coding. I was like 12 or 13.
That's amazing.
And I remember just enjoying it a lot. Like I loved being creative. So I love when I was a kid, I wanted to become a writer, or wanted to become a comic book drawer or something about like
Wow.
being creative. And then I realized I could build a website and I could be creative there. So I built a website about comic books and stickman
Really?
figures, animation, and stuff that I liked on the artistic side. But
Yeah. And so, Nico,
that's
that
how I
sounds like you literally went to a coding camp. We
sort
have.
of. It was actually called American Village. So it
Oh,
was a 2 week like summer camp where all the staffs would just be speaking English, no French,
right.
except for maybe the nurse, like or stuff like very critical. But
Yeah.
they would sort of force the kids to speak English, and you would have like papers everywhere. Every time you wanted to ask something, like in the cafeteria, they would be like, "May I have?" And then all the ingredients on the walls, like salt, please.
Wow.
Um, and so this was a camp where every day was a different uh, like uh, uh, like symbolic day in the US. I don't know, Halloween day or maybe Christmas. I mean, literally every day would be a specific day, and there would be a theme. And so every 2 days as well for this specific, there was a specialization where we would do 2 hours of coding every 2 days.
Right.
And so that's how I
That's
started to
amazing.
learn
And
coding.
so, would you say then, based on that, that essentially shaped your kind of career in terms of early aspirations? You would say that what your mom had kind of put you in front of, she almost instinctively knew that that was kind of what you were, or was that just purely coincidental that you were going to enjoy the camp and you were going to enjoy coding for, kind of building um, your comic book, your love of comic books and including that in coding? Did your mom know that about you, or was that just a pure fluke?
I actually don't know. Even myself, I couldn't think I would enjoy coding. Like when I saw the camp, I was like, oh well, 2 hours every 2 days, that's fine. Like building a website, why not? I was not really enthusiastic really about this part. I was more enthusiastic about coming back to this summer camp because I did it like a few years in a row.
I
And
see.
this one was the first time they did that, probably because one of the staff was a webmaster or something, and
Right.
proposed to do that as an activity.
Yes.
And so I said, why not? Like it could be a fun thing to do. But then it sort of sparked something. Even after the camp, I continued doing it for a bit. I wanted to build my own website. I found a small team of people as teenagers, just all building a website and trying to create something that we liked.
Right.
And it lasted for years, actually.
Yeah. Right. And did that essentially kind of influence? I mean, you said it was an American based, I mean, it was called America. What did
So
you say?
American Village, but it was
American
based in,
Village.
it was actually in France.
Right. It
So
was,
it was hosted like in places in France, but all the stuff would be American, yeah.
wow, that's interesting, isn't it? Did that sort of influence your worldview on kind of your ambitions, or did it really just kind of kickstart your love of coding and all things, kind of building in the digital world?
No, I don't think I was necessarily ambitious back then. I just wanted to live
You
my
were
life
just
as a teenager.
enjoying. You were just enjoying the moment in time and realizing, oh my god, this is so
Exactly.
many cool things I could do
I had
here.
no idea what I wanted to do. I didn't know what schools I wanted to do. I didn't know what branch or like what sort of topics I would choose, specialization.
I
Even in
see.
high school, you could choose like different paths.
Yes.
I had no idea back then.
Yeah. And did your mom kind of guide you towards the end of high school, or did you just say, because I don't, you went to university, right? So ultimately, you ended up going to university. You would have received some sort of guidance as to the subjects that you had to study to get to the, to get to the degree that you studied for in university. Can you tell me a little bit about that and the lead up?
Yeah, actually, I have a funny story about this. So essentially, there's a very renowned school in Europe called EPFL, which
Okay.
actually is just 50, 60 kilometers away from where my parents lived.
Yep.
And so because it was so renowned, in my mind, I was like, okay, this is the school I want to aim. At least if I go there,
Yep.
or so my parents said, it would open a lot of doors.
Yep.
I mean, it's true. It's quite. I mean, to get a job at least in Switzerland or in Europe, if you get there, it's quite renowned, so
I
it's
see.
acceptable. But in my mind, it was this or nothing.
Oh, wow.
And they had like a very strict passing grade, and it became even stricter over time. But I need to get this grade, which was back then it was 14 out of 20. Now it's actually I think it's 16,
It's
even
higher, is
17
it?
out of 20.
Ah,
I don't know what's the equivalent in GPA, like, or
right.
but probably maybe it's equivalent to something like 3, maybe out of 4, and maybe now they ask to have like 3.5 out of 4. I'm not too
Right.
sure. I don't know
Yeah.
really the
It'd have to be pretty high, wouldn't you think? If it's
yeah.
gone.
So it exactly. So 14 in general is considered like a good like you have like a distinction,
Yes.
and when you're 16, it's like a like high distinction, and then
Yes.
18 is
Yeah.
very rare, but this is like excellent.
Yeah. Yeah. And so how did you go? You did
So
okay, and
I did. I was really good at the scientific
yes.
topics, but then
Was
the
English a
rest.
factor in that as well? And scientific,
Sorry.
so science, you, because usually it's science, English, mathematics. They're usually
Yeah,
kind of
exactly.
the
It was the
three,
four.
right?
It was four of the topics that I need to have like good grades to really go to UPFL. So it was math, biology, physics, and chemistry, and English.
Right. Yeah. Gotcha.
For these ones, I was all good to go, and I was so when I got the grade, I remember I wasn't sure I would get the grades. My mom was just waiting for me. I was reading the paper on the like the result, like when we go to the high school and see the results on like it was all displayed everywhere,
Yes.
and I
On the
would reread
boards.
it 3 times to make sure I read it well, like distinction good,
Oh,
distinction good,
wow.
read it again, Nicholas Tilly,
You're
distinction
like,
good.
"Was that mine? Is that my score?"
It's like, mom, I got the distinction good, and she started crying like
Really?
and just after that I said like to her, okay, tomorrow I go to with my best friend back then, I
Yes.
go to EPFL and I go register for uni.
Amazing.
And so I took the train. I arrived there, and there were no one in university. It was like in the middle of summer, like July or something.
Right.
And I arrived at the reception, and I said, "So we just got our grades from high school, and we want to register to EPFL." And she said, "Oh, it's actually not happening until next month, but
Uh,
well, we'll do an exception for you. And we just got
Really?
registered like that
It's amazing.
for university. That was, we were like so happy. Yeah, that was a
Yeah.
really good memory
Well, I
for
imagine
me.
they were like, "Oh, we've got a young man here who's really keen to register," and
And I had no idea what I signed up for.
that's so
But still
funny.
good.
So then you got into university, Nico. What was that like for you? Like, was it everything you expected it to be? And how did you go about uh, sort of fitting into university life? What was that like for you?
So before I went to uni, and there was this day to visit and see how uni is, and also choose which sort of department I would choose to go in. And I fell in love with the robotics one
Ah,
because they were showing like really they make it impressive. There was like this team that launched a satellite
what year was that
in
about?
space.
What year could you
That was like
remember?
2008, 2009
Oh
when I
eight.
visited.
Okay.
Because I started 2009, so it was
Okay.
probably 2008, and the year before as well. I visited the university,
I see.
so they have
Yes.
an open day, and you could visit a few different sections. And so they make really good presentation, and the robotic ones was really interesting because they
Yeah.
were making robots that was mimicking animals. They were showing robots that are super fast in the industry, or the one that they put in space, like in
Yeah.
satellites. And I'm like, wow, okay, this is what I
Yes.
want to do. But then you realize that all of this is just like the outside layer of
Right.
what the
There's a lot
reality is.
underneath it to put it all
And then
together.
you get into the brutal reality of what studying is,
Right.
and what it means to build these robots.
Yes.
And it was harsh. It was really harsh. I think the first year there was more than 50% of failure.
Oh wow.
So I didn't go out like for a year. I just literally just studied, and I was really stressed about failing my first year.
Yeah.
And before I finish this story, fun fact: I created 2 videos to say that I failed my first year.
Oh
Uh,
wow.
that was sort of became a little bit viral just at university.
Yes.
So everyone
Oh,
thought
I think I
I
remember that
failed my
one.
first year, but I actually didn't. So I finished my
Oh,
first year on the first try, but it was I never saw anything outside of uni during this first year. And I remember my mom took me out to celebrate this at the end of the year. We went by the lake, and I realized there was a place by the lake, which makes sense because the city is by the lake. But I never never been by the lake for the entire year, and I was like, wow, you can see the lake from here.
you'd locked
Oh, this
yourself
is
in for
crazy.
so long. You'd forgotten
And
what it was like. Oh wow.
oh yeah, my mom is still taunting me about this every time I see her for Christmas or something. She will tell this story.
That is such a memorable story to tell. Because I was going to say you had effectively locked yourself away from society because you were so worried about flunking, you know, university. When you realize how difficult that was, if when you reflect back on your days in university, because obviously I imagine you eventually graduated and you got your degree. When you reflect back on those days in university, what sort of coping mechanisms did you apply to get through that really difficult year that you know what I mean? Like you went through. Did you have to, sort of think about how you would sustain the way you were feeling about, not failing during that time?
Yes, and I also made nightmares about it for years after that. But
Really?
essentially, my coping mechanism, like during while it was happening, was we had only exams at the end of each semesters,
Mm-hmm.
and we would have like 4 to 6, sometimes 7 exams during a month, and we had like a few weeks to prepare. And during these weeks, I would make myself a really strict agenda where I would start at 8,
Yep.
take 1 hour for lunch, continue up until 7, 1 hour, and then continue up until 10. So I would
Yep.
do like really strict schedule of trying to go towards every topic, every exercise that we did for the different topics that we learned during the years. And it would be super stressful like during this time. And after I finish all my exams, it would take me often weeks to recover. So I would sleep
Yeah.
a lot. I would just like be in sort of this really tired state for 2 weeks, just not necessarily wanting to do anything or light things. Like I don't want to go party hard, and no,
Right.
I was just like super tired, and so that was my coping mechanism back then. And after uni, for years, now it's toned down. But I remember even making it every day when I first arrived in Australia, because I was so stressed that I wouldn't be able to get my visa to stay because I had a working holiday visa and I was looking for a job and I was super stressed. I had this in like my future in to stay in Australia was uncertain. I just moved in with my girlfriend. I wanted to make sure I could stay with her the entire time she was there doing her PhD,
Of course.
and I was so stressed that every day, every night actually, I would make this nightmare where I was failing university
Wow. So that
every night.
bled into it's almost trauma, isn't it? So that kind of bled into your professional life, kind of the start of your professional life, right?
I had a lot of time to reflect on it
Yeah.
actually, um, and it and it made what I'm today. So I still have this sort of uh, uh, let's say I'm afraid to fail. I'm afraid to. I have this imposter syndrome, which was the same when I arrived at university because it was one of the most renowned university. I was like, am I really legit to be here? Every time I would arrive in a new company or a new team, I would always think to myself, am I actually at the right place? Am I just like up to the standard to what I'm about to do?
Yeah.
But this stress at the same time was also what kept pushing me
Yes.
and what made me curious, what made me learn, what made me want to be up to the standard I was thinking I should be,
Yeah.
and continuously like just try to improve myself. And I think it had, despite thinking like you would always feel like you're underneath everybody, anything, it was also the thing that pushed me forwards, and it has the quite positive impact in fact, without realizing it.
Yeah, that's so interesting, isn't it, Nico? Because at the time you don't think that way, right? Because you're too busy trying not to fail, and you're trying to do the best that you can, and the last thing on your mind is survival. Even though actually, you had to survive nonetheless as part of going through that process. If you were to look back and say to those who are just about to embark on university, particularly in going into the field that you're in, which is around, software coding, artificial intelligence, all things kind of even data related. Um, what might be, if you reflect back on those days, what might be some of I guess, the guiding advice or pieces that you might give somebody who's about to embark on university and those who really want to do as well as you wanted to do in uni? What would be your kind of advice there?
I'd say really try to be honest to yourself about what you like and what you don't like. When I was doing uni, I actually realized I didn't like what I was studying.
I see.
But there was part of it that I really liked, and I just thought, okay, maybe I could think of a way that I could use this to redirect myself in the future. And I kept pushing for that every time. So I
Yes.
arrived at places I didn't want to be, or I didn't fully want. This is not that was not my original goal, and then I just kept forward by just grabbing what I actually enjoyed and keep going forward. The second thing is also if there are things that actually creates a spark in you and you have this curiosity to learn this thing that you have this spark, keep going. Like
Right.
I think this is something that I always, every time there was something that I really liked, I wanted to explore, I would go for it and I would try it. And back then at university, I even almost left university because I was passionate about video making.
Right.
And I was studying during the evening for 2 years to become to have like a license to do video.
Yeah.
And I even worked as a video maker. So I was doing video editing, I was doing filming, I was doing producing, and also directing
Yep.
uh, at a small scale, but was making a little bit of money out of it. as a student, and I was really enjoying it, and I even thought maybe I could actually do that as my job.
Right.
Um, but yeah, this is another story. Didn't went through.
Yes. So it's so if I'm thinking about, if I reflect back on what you'd said be honest with yourself about what it is that you actually enjoy going into, because that's what's going to hold you up in university, because you're really going to follow that passion. Um,
Yes,
and if you don't like it, then you say get out or change, not get out necessarily,
yes,
but think about what
exactly.
else you could do that's kind of similar. And the other thing is what sparks your, what's that fire in your belly that makes you curious to, sort of learn
And
more.
and maybe just to nuance a little bit my what I said about, it's not necessarily get out, but it's redirecting yourself. Like
Yes,
so,
pivot.
it,
Yeah.
exactly. It's not about just quitting directly. Sometimes it's a good choice, but
Yes.
sometimes it's quitting what you're currently doing is not the solution. Maybe it's about being a bit resilient about it, but trying to find the part of it that you enjoy, and try to um, I'd say like accentuate this part, like try to be maybe put more focus on this, put more energy on the thing that you enjoy,
Yes.
and naturally you will pivot towards that path. So that's how it was in uni, but also it how it works also in a workplace. Like if you like something, naturally you will drift towards it. So
Yes, yes, absolutely. And so you got through university. You managed to sustain and sort of push yourself through the challenges of uni life. Did you stay in France, or did you travel around? What did you do once you graduated?
so so I was studying. So I did my high school in France, then I studied in Switzerland, and after my
Right.
dream was to
Okay.
go
That's
do
right.
like
Yes.
a world tour, like not a world tour, but travel for a few months, like 6 months somewhere. And I dreamt about going to Australia, actually, New
Right.
Zealand as well. And because my dad was living for a few years in Vietnam back then, I also did a stop there. So right after I finished my master degree, I traveled for 6 months, and I went to I started with Vietnam, then continued to Singapore, uh, New Zealand, and Australia. And I just fell in love with Melbourne as well. And I thought, that could be a city where I could live in. And years later, I moved in.
You found yourself there in the end. So that's what you did after university. You did a little bit of travel. When did you meet your partner? Did you meet your partner before or after
We met at
traveling,
the
or
beginning of university. We were actually
ah,
in the same high school, but I didn't really know her back then. It's just after we went to university, because she's just 1 year younger than me. So she started uni 1 year after.
yes.
And because we had friends in common, we started to all hang out together. We had sort of this group of friends, and for a long time we were just really great friends. Like we never had something together before after uni actually, and
Yes.
we became together. We became a couple like after uni.
Yeah. That's crazy because were you expecting to find a partner in university, or were you looking for love at that point, or did that just become, just sort of eventually become something that you and your partner just eventually came together without actually realizing that you liked each other, or how did that sort
Yeah,
of
it
form?
happened like that. Yes, with Coralie, so my partner. Um, it happened like that because I had, because she was a close friend. On my mind, I had this sort of limit of, okay, close friends is just close friend, and
Yes,
then if I need to have a relationship, it had to be with new people that I didn't know.
I see.
Um,
Couldn't be somebody in your
so
friendship group.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, it sort of didn't cross my mind. I don't know. But for all of university, actually, she was with someone else, and unfortunately, they didn't work out at the end of uni for them. So they were still like in good terms, but they decided to break up like in their master. And during that time, I was also looking for a new room for to finish my master degree. So we actually become roommates with Coralie. So we were roommates for about 6 months,
Yep.
just as friends. But
Yes.
as she was finishing her master, she was actually going to Australia to do her master thesis. And the day or a few days before she left, we had this click of actually this spark between us, but we didn't realize it. Like she actually kissed me on the cheek, and then I realized, oh, what is going on? And I looked at her, and then
Magic.
something like something in my mind just was like, oh, okay, she actually can be something else than a friend, than just a friend.
Yes, yes. And then
And that's how it
and
started.
then years of romance was born thereafter. And so
Uh, I'm looking at this like that was more, that 11 years ago. No, 10 years ago. Yeah.
10 years. So you're celebrating your 10-year anniversary this year. That's
Soon, yes.
fantastic. Yeah. And so you traveled together in to Australia. You finally reached your dream of, sort of traveling to Australia. You took Coralie with you. What did you do to kind of what led you to that point, and how did you get a career in Australia? You know what I mean? I know it's not an easy thing to do for those
Mm.
living abroad.
So maybe I'll just backtrack a tiny bit,
Yeah.
give a bit of backstory on like what I started to do in Switzerland. But I worked
Yes.
for a year in Filico, which is a consulting company that was specialized in doing Avaloq software engineering. So Avaloq is a banking platform, and turns out that they there was two bank in Australia that also was doing Avaloq.
Yeah.
So for me, that was kind of the pathway to find a job in Australia. But I didn't know that when I moved to Australia. So I
Right.
moved to Australia because my partner was actually starting her PhD there, and I was dreaming to actually go to Australia. So for me, it was like, yeah, go for it. I
Yeah.
would definitely go follow you there. And I went there, just quit my job without any new job there, arriving in Australia, and just like, yeah, it's okay. I'll find something. And then I realized, without a lot of experience, like especially as a junior, when I had only 1 year of experience, and without a proper visa, it was actually very hard to find a job because
Yeah.
it's quite strict in Australia in terms of visa, like, and also
Yes.
companies, the company's investment to do a visa and find someone that is suitable for the company. It's not just like if you're Australian or you have a permanent residency, they don't have any admins to do. But if it's actually another type of visa, then there's a lot of admin to do for the company, and it's a bit like of a sort of an obstacle to actually be employed. So I
Yes.
struggled for
Yeah.
6 months trying to find any kind of job that I like, starting to sort of trying to get like any developer job and anything. I tried a lot of things, didn't work out. And after a while, I discovered that actually there was Avaloq in Australia. The
Hey.
thing is, I didn't want to do Avaloq. So I was like,
Yeah.
okay, that's the last result for me. I'm okay. I'll just, if I can find a job for me, that's good enough. So
Yes.
I started to have some contacts, and turns out the resource, like the supply of people knowing Avaloq in Australia, was really low. So
Right.
when they knew that someone even had just 1 year of Avaloq experience was there, it was like, quick, let's get this guy.
Yes.
So that's how I got my first job in Australia, and how I continued to do Avaloq there. And so
Yes.
to trace back what I was saying before, then my goal was to pivot to actually what I was wanting to do, which was data analytics and data science.
Yeah.
And so I
Yeah.
studied before I could actually switch to a different company and start doing that.
Yes. Yes. I think that's incredible because at the same time you had to learn about Australia, kind of assimilate. I don't know if you and Coralie had to then also find housing, or whether that was part of the deal for Coralie's PhD. Did you both have to look for housing, or was that something that came with it?
She actually visited a few different houses before I arrived in Australia. So she was just doing videos of places she would visit, and then we would comment together
Yes.
about the different places.
Yes.
And so we found a place in Northcote, like a little bit north of Melbourne,
Yep.
which was a place where we lived 3, 4 years, and we loved it. But something that was a little bit funny about it was right next to a train stop.
Oh,
And
wow.
so I'm very sensitive to noise. So when I first arrived, and especially there's no double glazing in most of the houses in Australia.
Okay.
At least like if it's a little bit old or something, like there's no
Yes.
double glazing. So right next to the train station, there would be this, how is it called? Like when the barriers are just opening,
Oh,
there
the
would be
boom
this
gates?
exactly the boom
Yeah.
gates. There would be this ringing noise that would always like make a lot of noise. I could hear it from my room, and
Yes.
then each time the train was leaving, it would honk, and you could. And
You
at
could hear
first, the
that
first time I arrived,
sleeping.
yeah, and I arrived in the house for the first time. There was no furniture. I just sat in front of the window and just sat there for 20 minutes, just like listening to the sounds of the train, a little bit like crying internally, like, what
Why
did we
me?
do? Who did we do? But I eventually got used to it. So, and we were really happy there. So it was fine. But yeah, eventually we moved out and we found a better place.
Yeah, yeah. Your story sounds similar to mine. My first rental was in a unit right opposite the train line. And mine was, I don't know if yours was as bad as mine, but mine was so bad. My unit was so bad. I could see the people sitting on the platform from my living room on
Oh,
the train
wow.
platform. That's how
Oh,
close, that's how they could look into my living room. That's how close I was. I was literally living on the train line. So I totally feel your experience. 5 o'clock in the morning, I would hear the train just coming and, like you said, the horn, like, it would toot its horn before it left every time. And I thought, and actually it
and just,
became a bit of an alarm clock for me in the end because the schedules.
yeah, that's for sure. But out of curiosity, where was that about? Like in Melbourne? Somewhere in
Yeah, it was
Melbourne?
here in Victoria. It was on the Pakenham line down
Okay.
towards the southeast suburbs. It was so bad. It was the Narre Warren stop. You wouldn't know this suburb, but yeah, southeast. It was pretty bad. I had to move out of there pretty quick. I wasn't getting much sleep.
No,
So
I couldn't see I mean, couldn't see the people on the platform, but yeah, the sound was like very loud. I have like a video of my cat Nakia that I got in Australia, where she's climbing inside the house, and I didn't hear the noise. I was so used to it, I wouldn't even
oh,
hear
you
the
became
honk
immune to
anymore.
it.
But when I looked at the videos like years later, even coming back here, and then I listened to the video, and I was like, oh, wow, it's so loud, and I was not even paying attention to it. I was just like living my life without realizing it was there.
How loud it was. I had a cat too, and my cat would sit in the window and actually just watch and listen to the train pass by. So yeah, I totally relate to your story. So you were in Australia. You started working, and for a job that you probably didn't really want to work for. Then and obviously Coralie was well into her PhD and studying and so on. How did you find? What was it like in Australia for you living in Melbourne? Was it up to your expectations? Was the weather a little bit? Oh well, I mean, you'd lived in Switzerland, so you knew what it was like to be cold. We don't have the right to say that we get cold here, do
No,
we?
no, 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 no,
We
no.
don't have
That's
the
actually
right.
wrong. That's
Oh,
actually wrong.
really? Oh,
I
tell
never
me.
felt as cold in Australia that I felt
What?
cold in Switzerland. And the reason is simple, the isolation inside the house.
Mm,
Like here, I never feel cold inside the house, but
yes.
I felt so cold in Australia. Sometimes just
Yes.
getting out of the bed and having like, I don't know, between like even 15 degrees inside the house, getting out of bed and going to the shower
It's
would be freezing
cold.
cold for me. Like I would feel so cold, and
And
it was just like never. It would never be below zero in Australia, or rarely.
no.
In Switzerland, you would have below zero,
Yes.
but inside it's so like we're used to cold here, so people have really good insulation,
Yes.
double glazing, proper heating, and all these type of things. Was in Australia actually. Most of the units I lived in, the walls were very thin, and
Yeah.
there would be no double glazing, so
Yes.
you had
That's
to put a lot of
exactly right.
heating all the time to make sure you're warm, and yeah, it's
Yeah, it's brutal, isn't
It
it?
was a different type of cold.
So you're saying technically we do have the right to say that it's cold here because you know why? We sleep in the cold and we wake up when it's cold, and then when we get outside, it's still cold.
Exactly.
So we never really escape. And then in summer, it's the same. It's the opposite. We sleep when it's hot and it's really hot inside the house, and you get outside,
Yeah,
it's worse. So it starts from
yeah,
a bad
crazy.
position in the first place to get to then worse.
That's
Oh,
right. Yeah.
you probably have to be the first person that actually validated our feelings about being cold in Victoria. Because I know there's a lot of people around the world that kind of go, oh, Australians don't have the right to say that they're cold because it just doesn't, it
The-
isn't
Corelli didn't even realize that Victoria could be cold. So the first time she traveled to Australia, actually when she went for her master thesis, she arrived at the end of summer, so it was actually warm. But she didn't pack any like warm clothes or even a jacket because
right.
she thought it's
It's gonna be,
Australia.
yeah.
What? It will just be warm, right? And then like winter hits while she was there, so she had to buy everything because it
Yes.
was so cold for her.
Yeah.
She had no idea. She had no
Yes.
idea.
I'm
She thought
wearing
like
beanies in winter and scarves and gloves on my hands. But, you raise a good point. It's because we're also sleeping in fridges.
exactly. Yeah.
So Australia there, you started your first job, then I know you moved into banking because you and I were colleagues at a point, and I know that you did data science there, and you were excellent. So I'm gonna say that it was a shame to
Thank
lose
you.
you um, to other
I
things. Yes, go ahead,
yeah, I
Nico.
felt I am when I think about the first time I started at ANZ, for me that was the first job landing as a data scientist. So I was like, finally, I'm getting to the place I want to be.
Right,
At the same time, this huge imposter syndrome, like all the
gotcha.
time. Like I was saying before, every time I would arrive in a new place, in a new job, this would hit very hard.
Right.
Yeah, I was trying just my best, like really trying to make the best out of it and learned a lot as well. I was keeping like studying all the time and making sure I was
Yeah.
up to the challenge.
Yeah, I
In
mean,
the
I
end,
think, look, I share the same feelings. I mean, you and I worked in the same space, and I too was going through a bit of imposter syndrome at the time. And, I was learning a lot. You knew a lot about, sort of data science and on the technical side, like you were obviously far and away better than I am. And I think that was a real learning curve for you and I. I think where we were kind of learning about strategic workforce planning and all of the, sort of getting to know all of the nuances there, and obviously what we need to do to sort of get ourselves up to speed. But it was definitely a good learning curve. Would that be your reflection as well?
yeah, it was a steep learning curve. I think
Yeah.
especially strategic workforce planning, where there was like lots to learn about every different businesses. Just even the topic was quite broad and also sort of it was also kind of tough to translate um, technical stuff into actually what we were doing. Like I
Yes.
was when I studied like machine learning and data science, it was all like sort of pre-made stuff that that when you study, like it's all thought of very well, and then you arrive with real life problem, and then you're like, oh, but how do you apply this
Yeah.
all this theory into these problems?
Yes.
But we try our best, and all in all, like there's also other brilliant minds that thought about it before. We were
Yes.
surrounded by also smart people
Yeah.
who knew like what to do, so it worked out.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I think it is that thing, isn't it? You go to school, you learn the theory and you learn the skills, and then you go into the real world and you go, "Oh, how do I apply this? How do I apply all of this, and how do I translate what I know technically? How do I then translate it for those who don't quite understand the work and don't quite understand the technicalities, or even like having to draw a picture, it's kind of almost painting a picture for people to understand is the biggest learning for me, as well as obviously the work. So then you spent time in Australia. And I think
And
you also,
before we move to the next topic, just so you know, people that will listen to this,
yes,
Rachel was actually my best mentor when I moved to this company. Like she was really awesome to teach me around. Like it was hard to navigate all the political side of arriving to big departments, learning about everything about the company, a 50,000 people company. So many things to understand, the dialect inside, the people, who was who. And she was a great mentor to me
it's very kind
back
of
then.
you.
So you were a great mentor to me. And so yeah, just so you know, like that's how we met. That's when I started this role actually as a data scientist. Rachel was the first person who interviewed me to the job, and eventually I got in,
Nico, that's
and we
so
started to
so
work
very
together
kind of
for a
you.
few months.
And yes, I did interview you, but you blew my socks off. I will say, you blew my socks off. You know, you and I, let's face it, we didn't know a great deal about strategic workforce planning together. I mean, I had a couple of years or a year and a bit head start before you came along, but I was still traversing the unknowns of strategic workforce planning and obviously dealing into stakeholders and so on. But the interview process, Nico, you really blew my socks off, and that's why I chose you. So I will say, although you say that I was a good mentor to you, you were equally an excellent candidate for the role, which is why I always say it was a shame to lose you. Um, but then, Nico, so you spent a couple of years with us in the bank, but then you ultimately landed your dream job at Atlassian, right? What was that like for
Yes.
you? Because I know that was such a stressful period for you to get into the, oh my God, the interview process was so grueling, Nico. Tell us
Yep.
about that. For those who are, like the thirsty coconuts out there that are, sort of looking for their dream job and finally landing in that, because that in itself, Nico, is a massive achievement. What was that? Walk us through that process.
So at first, very unexpected because I saw the job ad for Atlassian as a data scientist, and I thought, all right, I'll just. There was the easy apply button on LinkedIn. I just easy apply, put my resume, and then send.
Yeah,
We never know. 800 applicants.
800.
Why not try? You know. And I got the phone call, and I was like, no way. Is it a scam? Like I was so mind blown that I would get the phone call, like just the screening call. So as soon as I got the screening call, I thought, okay, this is my chance. I will give my all to try to land the job. Even if I don't get it, I want to try everything like I can to land a job there, because for me it was like the equivalent of a really good tech company. It had really nice values that I really like. Back then I was really idolizing Atlassian.
Right.
And Canva was also one of the companies I was really eyeing towards. And so for a month, I studied all the candidate hub. I had like a take home project for a week. I was doing that until late every day while I was doing the job. Would spend all my days during the weekend to make sure I had something like really good to send back. Um, Even the thing that I sent back was actually not that great, but somehow it was enough to get the manager to like me. Like I had um, there was 5 steps on the interviews.
Yes.
The first 2 screenings calls, so one with the first call that I said, then there was a first screening call with the manager, with one manager actually. Then there was like a values interview, a technical interview, after the one where I had the take home project. And finally, it was actually not an interview at the end. It was more like, okay, you passed all the other interviews. Now you will land the job at Atlassian. It's just that, and I found it really interesting. Instead of landing one job in one particular team, they just recruit a pool of data scientists, and then they let them choose sort of their preferences of different teams they would like to work towards, to work in.
Yes.
And then they put their preferences. The managers put also their preferences, and then they try to make the best match.
Yes.
And that's how I met so Jeff. I call him GP.
Okay.
Worked at Atlassian too. Great boss, and we we had like a really good relationship before I started. and I was just like mind blown when I arrived. Like I received even the gift, the classic thing when you start in a tech company, you receive a gift.
Yeah.
I was like, welcome to the company. You receive like I don't remember, like a notebook. And I was just like, wow, this is amazing. Like, it's like the best welcome ever. Like, I was just
Love that.
like crazy happy.
Yes.
My experience there was great. Honestly, I really had a great experience at Ectasian. It felt like I was. So I had imposter syndrome, of course, when I arrived there. Like, why am I here?
Right.
800 applicants. Somehow I landed a job there. I arrived in people like around people that had PhDs, like publishing papers, or like our professors in universities, or presenting, or doing podcasts. Like it's just
Wow.
people really, really good and renowned, and I was surrounded by this type of people.
Yeah.
And so I felt like, wow, why am I here? But um, but I was just thinking, okay, just give your best and learn from these people. Maybe you can achieve that maybe later, and try to get towards that. So it kept pushing me, as I was saying before, and I was aiming to get there at some point, but I was not there at all. And I thought, okay, maybe this is about the journey and just enjoy that while you're there.
Understood.
Unfortunately, 9 months later, for the first time ever in their history since their inception, they had their first big layoff, and
Right.
I was devastated.
Yeah. Oh, that would have been devastating for you.
And yeah, it was just like we received an email in the morning. An hour later, the computer turns off, and that was it. Fortunately, they were quite arranging, so we had like a package, like what's it called, like when you leave, a leave package. There was also, they were urgent for me regarding the visa, so I could instead find a way to use my package instead as uh, be distributed for every month, so I could have my visa not expire until later, in case I couldn't find a job in time. Because
Yes.
after you lose your job, you have 2 months or 3 months to find a new job. Otherwise,
Before
you
then,
have
you
to
have
get out.
to exit the country.
So it was stressful times.
Yeah.
But I knew as well that this year I wanted to come back to. I mean, it was not sure, but there was a plan to potentially come back to Europe,
Yes.
uh, and so was starting to think about it with my partner. We were there already for 6 years, so we're thinking, okay, maybe it's time to go back after this big pandemic, the lockdowns where we couldn't get out to see our family for 3 years.
Yeah.
We had like a really good time in Australia. The career was, for me, I achieved the peak at Atlassian for me,
Yes.
but it was not finished. And I was like, okay, let's just continue a tiny bit more. And I came back to the first company I arrived in Australia,
Yes.
but not as a Avaloq consult or developer, but actually doing AI strategy and AI development.
Yeah. Because I think they
Uh,
sought you. I think they were hungry to get you back, weren't they?
I had a really good relationship with the people there. I knew most of the people. I had because I did Avaloq there for almost 3 years.
Hmm.
I knew it was I mean, not a big company, like 300, 400 people. So I knew most of the people there. I knew the exec team. So coming back to a place where you're trusted, and I had friends there as well. I thought maybe it's actually a good way to finish my time in Australia, to be surrounded by people I know, I trust, and I like to work with, and doing something that I like doing, like continuing my career in AI and data science. So for me, that was the best choice. And
I
I actually
love that.
refused to come back to Atlassian. I had a proposal to come back, but it was stressful time back then, and it was actually
Yeah.
not a good choice. Like a lot of people that was staying after the layoff were really stressed.
Right.
And I had also an opportunity to join Canva, but it was like just for 6 months. And I thought, if I need to work for 6 months and try to rebuild trust, start something from scratch, and leave after 6 months, is it really worth it?
Yeah.
So I thought just coming back to an environment I know before I leave was just, for me, that was the best choice. I wanted to enjoy my
Yeah.
time in Australia before I leave.
Oh, Nico, you're so wise beyond your years. So if you reflect back, and I'm going to go to move to across to your current, your current. I mean, you're now an entrepreneur, right, and a consultant. But before I move across to that, What would you say, reflecting back on your time and Corley's time in Australia, what would you say, I guess, was the most your most proudest moment um, in Australia before you left? What would you say you were the most proud of while you were here?
I think proud. That's a good question. So if I take aside the career path, because I was really proud about all my journey there, so that's a different thing because I
That's a
really tried
given.
to get there.
Yeah.
But outside of work, it's just the time I spent there. I loved Melbourne. I was so happy to have met the people that I met in Melbourne. The the fact that I had the opportunity to visit a lot of Victoria, because I traveled a little bit around Australia, but when there was the lockdown, pretty much we couldn't leave Victoria, so I was just visiting a lot of Victoria. And I think just having just all of this, like had the chance to live in Australia, to be there, to see uh, um, cockatoos almost every day, and parrots like on the trees just in front of my window.
Right.
Just all of this, I am so actually proud of having had that moment, all these moments, and spending the time with like the people I met there, including you. So it's for me that's I think I'm so happy to have had this experience in Australia. I would have, I don't know, it's hard to know what I would have done if I didn't go to Australia, but I just I wish I could had a bit more time there as well. But
Yes.
also I'm happy to have come back closer to my family and
Yeah.
my friends here as well.
Yeah. I mean, that's such an inspiration, Nico, that you, number one, worked your tail off in university to the point where you traumatized yourself for years to come. So you worked your tail off in university and then you moved, you completely, sort of upended your life in Switzerland and obviously your upbringing in France and left your family to go to live in a foreign country in Australia, which is completely different from what you know. Um, Work there, find a job, learn about the culture, drink the coffee. I don't know if you enjoyed the coffee and
I
the
was a tea
food.
person. I was drinking mostly tea. I never
Ah,
really drank coffee, but Coralie was a big
she
coffee
liked the
drinker.
coffee. Okay, yeah. So you and then you both learned the culture, which was 3 years or so. And then you both decided then actually we were going to go back to back home and reacquaint ourselves with family and start a whole new career all together. You're now here with you're here now with Echo Tango. Can you tell us about kind of how that evolved? I know you're doing some consulting work as well. You're very busy these days. Can you tell us a little bit more about, sort of that story behind where you are at this point in your life?
Yeah, I think I sort of always wanted to, at some point, have my own business and be more independent. So I even want to see in Australia if I could start to do it, but it's because of my visa restrictions that was not
Mm,
possible back then. But if I
right.
could, I think
You would have done
maybe I
it.
would have done something earlier. I don't know. It's hard to know. Um, but Ekotengo has a few different background stories. The first one is before I did Ekotengo, I arrived and I contacted actually one of the person I really enjoyed working with when I started working at all, like in Filico, the first company I worked in Switzerland. So Fabi for intimate.
Yes.
um, so Fabi is actually like was my first mentor as well, my first manager. And I was working closely with him in my first role at Filico. And so I kept contact with him like every year, at least just one call,
Yeah.
or if I would go back to Europe, I would have a coffee or a lunch with him once a year. And so the year before just a few months before I came back, I contacted him and I said, well, I really enjoyed working with you in the past, and now this is my career, and I wanted to check whether I know that Filico is doing this, but would you be interested for me to start creating a team doing AI and data at Filico? And so that's how I that's how it started when I came back to Switzerland.
Yes.
The thing is, the first day I joined Filico, um, he left. He was a partner at Filico. He co-founded Filico, but he left the company.
Right.
So that was very unexpected. But I thought, okay, yeah, it's sad, but well, I'll continue that. So that was one element. The second thing is, I think I had my idea of what I wanted to do when I was at Filico, but after a few months, I realized that it didn't really align with how my career would evolve or what I was hoping it would evolve in terms of, I had this very entrepreneurship mindset,
Yes.
and I want to want to sort of um, shift things towards I don't know, uh, creating product,
Yes.
maybe doing sort of certain style of consulting, maybe recruiting sort of style of people. But I realized I didn't have actually that much freedom in doing all of this, and I was not really what I wanted to do. So second thing that sort of aligned, but that was not the trigger for me that made me leave Filico. The trigger was actually that there was this once in a lifetime opportunity to start Echo Tango. And I helped a couple of years before a friend who was doing his master thesis. He lost his job as a pilot. He was an airline pilot for 8 years. Then during the pandemic, lost his job for about a year or 6 months.
Right.
And so he was so devastated, he decided to start a master in data science or software engineering.
Mm-hmm.
And for his master thesis, he did something related to aviation with a bit of AI. And so he also asked me for guidance in some part of his project. And so we worked on it. And after
Yes.
he finished his master thesis, this project still continued. And he actually used it as a product for himself while he was flying. So it was
Ah,
actually what became the product that we have right now.
right.
And so he asked me sometimes for help to iterate on it bit by bit. And at some point, there was a client that started to be interested in it. And then we thought, okay, maybe this is the start of a business. And I contacted Fabi and I said, okay, I think I want to do this business and I would love to continue working with you. Maybe you would be interested to join us in this journey.
Yes.
And he accepted. And now we're all working together in Echo Tango and building this business.
Yes. And
So
if it's not an easy thing to do though, is it? Because there's lots of regulatory requirements associated with, sort of the aviation world. I mean, you would understand that also in banking. And so you would have brought kind of your knowledge and a little bit of an understanding about the challenges that building AI solutions and products bring, especially with the risk side of aviation. Was that a factor? Is that a big factor for you? When you were building out the solutions there?
So yeah, exactly, you pointed out, like coming from banking, which is highly regulated, and there's a heavy accent on security,
Yeah,
regulation, governance. It's similar to the aviation industry, but at
yeah,
a different level as well, because uh, the thing is, this product in particular, it does not impact, it would not lead a person to make wrong choices or something like that. No, it's not a risky product in terms of making choice that would kill other people potentially. I mean,
right.
so there's not this dependency, and so because we remove that sort of part of the risk of the product, then there's a bit less worry that we have
Yes,
to work towards that. So it's at least there's that. But yes, of course, like everything that is in the cockpit has to be regulated, and
yes,
we're well aware of that, and we know of the process that needs to go through. We have help on that. So yes, it's
yes,
like
yeah,
everything. Same in banking. There's lots of things to go through every time you want to manipulate data, do analysis, create products using
yes.
AI and so on and so forth.
Yes. And so that is what you're currently working on. You're also obviously consulting. In addition to doing that, I think you're also looking at other potential pieces in the future. which all sounds very exciting to have as a lineup of work. It sounds like a pretty good problem to have, right? It's you're not running out of ideas, you're not running out of opportunities. Would that be right for you?
Yeah. I think this, at the moment, the sort of market in AI is, or
Yeah.
not market, but innovation in AI is exploding. There's lots of new things coming up every day.
Yes.
It's hard to keep up actually.
Mm.
But because I'm currently at a team in my consulting work, we have a big team now, like 20 people, probably
Yeah.
12 to 14 developers, AI developers. We This team in particular try to keep up with the latest trends, and that's
Right.
actually excellent. We are keeping up, like trying to find what are the best solutions, open source packages, or concepts out there, and we try to apply it in our daily lives, in our products, in the thing that we deliver. And so that makes us like really on the edge of what's going on out there on the AI side. So it's at least on the LLM side, I'd say, more than the AI, because AI is quite broad, but
Yes.
the LLM side,
Yes.
in particular, applied to finance.
Yes. And for those thirsty coconuts who are watching, LLM is large language models. And that's what you're referring to, right? Is that's the generative AI side of things as well, right? So
Exactly.
yeah,
You would
yeah.
find in ChatGPT or Gemini.
Yes. That's incredible that you've actually moved into the AI space because that is the most impactful change in our lifetime. Would you agree?
Yes, it's both exciting and scary, but
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah, absolutely. I think if I think about AI and what Chat GPT and all the LLMs and generative AI products that are out there today, it's been such a short time. I would you say in a year and a half? It's been around maybe 2 years max.
More actually, it was, I
November.
mean,
Something tells me.
generative AI is there since a while, but it became like really popular since ChatGPT, so end of
Right. Yeah.
2022.
Okay. Yeah, because it was with Nvidia, and they were, it was always in the background, but really launched, the
That's right.
last few years. Right. I
Because
can't. Yeah. Go for it. You go, Nico.
no. It's just like thinking about end of 2022 when
Yeah.
it started to just be launched as a free product for everyone and just to try it. And back then, when people just started to try it, was like make a poem or try to make a text or something.
Yeah. It's
Just trying
crazy.
a little bit at the very beginning, rewrite my email. Now it became the standard. Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy, isn't it? Because, like, I mean, we've been using it, I've been using it for a short period of time, I think, compared to the amount of time that it's been available. And now I feel like I can't live without it. It's
Yeah.
crazy.
And it's scary too. Like even for me, I use it's embedded in my life as a in my life, in my personal life, but also my work life. It's everywhere. And I feel like I would feel dumb without it. It's like you don't have internet. If you don't have
Yes.
a, like, imagine you remove internet, and now all of a sudden you don't have access to all this knowledge online and all these things that you can do. Yeah, it feels like that. So I have this. It's funny because I have this work environment where it's very restricted. You can't have access to internet. You can't have access to, or very limited, and you can't have access to generative AI as well. And you have to code there. And I was used to code without generative AI in the past, like without issue. Now it feels like I'm super slow. I do it, but I feel super slow, and I'm like, wow, why am I so slow? And
Right.
it feels scary how now we're become so dependent on that. Like
Yeah.
just even like thinking, oh, how do I do this? Go to the documentation. That was the way I used to do it in the past. I just looking at documentation. If I didn't know it, for more obscure libraries that I didn't used to use. And now you have ChatGPT that would know, like, you can just pass it the documentation and it would provide the snippet of code, and then you test it and you're like, oh, done, easy.
Imagine feeling imposter syndrome against an AI chatbot. Imagine feeling imposter syndrome because you're comparing yourself. Once upon a time, you were pretty quick at coding or you were pretty quick at getting these things done. And now all of a sudden, you've got this machine that can do it 50 times faster. And you kind of feel like a bit of imposter. And you go,
So
Wow.
faster, yes. Better, not yet.
Better? Not
Um,
yet. Okay.
yes, it's a. I'd say, and there are terms now, right now, that are talking about product engineering, or like for people that use generative AI for coding a lot. Like now with these terms like vibe coding, where you don't even type a line of code and you just type a prompt, where then this agent that would write code for you for everything. But the problem is that it's really hard for these agents to keep the context across the entire code, also have all the latest information, the latest documentation, and so it would make a lot of mistakes if you don't guide it very well. So you need to be very close to the code actually, and understanding what is going on, and architect it really well, so that it doesn't do too many mistakes, and you can reduce this number of mistakes. But it
Yes.
will still do a lot of mistakes, and so if you're not used to actually code or know how to architect code, it might be easy to actually generate a small snippet of code, maybe like something very simple and small.
Hmm.
It's the best way to use it, I think. As soon
I
as you
see.
start to scale things a little bit bigger, then it's losing itself very
Right.
easily.
Yeah. Because it all goes back to maintenance and it all goes back to reviewing the code and making sure that you're, you know,
And that's one of the main issues right now in AI that people are trying to address, is like long-term memory. Memory is one of the issue, but also the step towards so memory is one big issue, but the other one is also how can we really embed agents more into an existing workspace, like say as a sort of virtual colleagues, or even like as
yeah.
a swarm of
Hmm.
agents. So we start to see this type of trends right now with Manus and with. Have you heard of Manus, for instance? Like the
No.
so Manus AI is like uh, s- as I was, the same thing I was explaining before, like
Yeah.
vibe coding kind of
Yep.
thing, where you just provide one prompt
Hmm.
and it would do it all for you. Like you say, I want to make a website talking about, I don't know, let's say talking about tea. And what it would do is it would first scroll the internet for a lot of information about tea.
Hmm.
And then it would even think about and plan ahead and make a to-do list of things to do,
Yep.
and execute it step by step until
Yep.
they actually find all the knowledge,
Yep.
make a plan, create a web page, and then at the end, here's the web page. I mean, the web page, even a site with different pages,
Yes.
and you have everything done in a few minutes.
Yep.
So that's quite impressive, but it's still not completely independent. You have to prompt it and say what you want, and now what people are looking forward to is like, how can we have these different type of triggers that are not necessarily a human prompting an agent, but actually maybe them proactively finding other triggers and interact with it. Like, oh, I see that you received an email, maybe this is a trigger,
Yes.
or you received a message, or you received something,
Yes.
and then maybe you should the agent should act independently and proactively on it, instead of waiting for the human to actually come to
That's
the
exactly
agent.
right. I was going to say, and thank you so much for letting me geek out on all of this stuff because I find this super interesting. And it's almost like you're building a virtual team that regulates itself, or a virtual team that,
Yeah,
you
we're
know
not
what?
there yet. I mean,
Yeah.
but
But you
aiming
need to
towards
get
that.
there, don't we? We need to get to that point, I guess. I don't know. What are your thoughts about that?
Uh, Again, scary and at the same time interesting.
Mm.
What would that mean for our daily lives if you had like agents that would start to do a lot of things proactively for us, without, maybe that would save you a lot of mental space, like during the day, like, oh, I forgot to do this, oh, I forgot to do that, and maybe all of a sudden now you have a notification, it's past 5, don't forget to do this. Oh, I don't
Yeah.
know.
You know,
Uh,
I mean, I keep talking about Sam Altman because the time that he said he went to, what's that annual, it's in Europe. It's an annual event that's usually held in Europe. I can't remember what it was. Anyway, in that event, he said, and now I've lost my train of track. You were talking about, scary,
no, I was talking
but
about
he,
automating, I mean, how it could be proactive in our lives. Maybe
yes,
that's it.
yeah, yeah. Um, I mean, he was talking about the fact that, like the scary side of things, how people worry about AI and all that sort of stuff. He was talking about. He was saying, "Look," and I think I might have told you this story before. I don't like. He was saying, "I actually don't know what we don't know what we think as humans. For example, I don't know what's in your mind. You don't know what's in my mind, and it's almost like that. AI is almost like, well, how do we know? How do I know how Nico rationalizes his decisions? And how does Nico know how I rationalize my decisions? Like, who knows if what I think is the right thing, or who knows if what I think you think is the right thing? It's the same thing with AI. We actually don't really know what is in each other's minds. Integrity is may not exist in someone's mind when they're creating something, and therefore they themselves would be creating something that's not for good. Whereas someone else has integrity and someone else lives with values, and they would build something that would be built around kind of the values and safety and all that sort of stuff. So as human beings, as we exist as human beings, we don't even know what each other, sort of what goes on through each other's minds. And the same has to be thought about for AI.
Yeah, it's exactly right. It's a big black box,
It's a big
and
black
there's a
box.
lot of work that is going on to try to make it as like improve explainability.
Yeah. It's like a child
Um,
you're trying to grow. Hey, I was listening to a podcast on this. So the Australian Financial Review, which is a newspaper that's very well regarded in Australia, and I listened to their podcast called Chanticleer. And they were talking about, so they have this, there's a sister podcast to Chanticleer, and they have this segment called 15 Minutes with the Boss. There was one interview where they were interviewing the CEO of Deloitte, and the CEO of Deloitte in this interview had said he foresees that one of the critical roles in the future will be an expert prompter in AI. Like he thinks that in the future, companies will be hiring expert prompters because that is a skill you're going to need to learn in the future when it comes to AI. What are your thoughts about that? Do you believe that?
yeah, it's kind of true because you need. It's not that it will be a dedicated role. I think it's more like everybody needs to become better at prompting AI in general, at interacting with AI in a general manner.
Yeah.
Um, that's just it. I've seen a few roles that were dedicated to prompt engineering, but I think it's very tailored towards very specific use case. I don't think it's like a big
Generic, like
a
in
generic
general.
role that everybody would want to have. Um, but that said, there is a lot of training being done in the different companies that I work with,
Mm-hmm.
including when I was doing like the AI strategy. I did a training uh, at LGT Crestone there
Mm-hmm.
just to teach a little bit about prompting. Like,
Yeah.
how do you interact with what can you do with AI? How does it in what sort of output you can get back from it?
Yeah.
And since then, it improved a lot. Like right now, you can even in ChatGPT alone, you can actually do data analysis and
Yeah.
lots of different things. Like
Yeah.
it's big. You can generate code and execute it. So literally anything you can think about
It's
can be
crazy, isn't
now
it?
done.
Nico, somebody did this. A friend of ours, we were on a call with a friend of ours, Zena and I, and we were talking about GPT. And she said, I don't know if you've tried this. Have you asked ChatGPT or Copilot how
I think I
many
know what you're gonna say.
how many R's are in the word strawberry?
Ah, no, I know this one. Yes, yes.
It's hilarious. It's
And
hilarious.
so this one is interesting because this question was used in two different models. Like one is the normal model, and of course, it wouldn't know it, so it would be wrong all the time. And
Yes.
then there's the thinking model, which is
Ah.
it do it step by step. So every time it does, okay, let's write this sentence and let's see which words has R's, and like you can actually see every step of the reasoning, and
Uh-huh.
then it would actually nail it down correctly. But yes, like it's the same for if you try what is bigger, 911 or 9.9 or 9.11. Ask
Right.
this question in ChatGPT,
Yeah.
And just like this, what is bigger? And you'll see it will usually, most of the time, answer 9.11 is bigger than 9.9.
Really?
Yes.
Isn't that funny? That goes to show that there's still a lot of work to be done on the AI space. So Nico, talking to you has just been super inspiring and eye-opening and insightful. I've got one last question for you before we wrap up. And so I'm gonna ask this question to you, and hopefully it won't take you by surprise. But if a coconut was a success, if a coconut were a success, what would be the 3 layers that would make that coconut successful for you?
Okay, I'm trying to decompose that question. I'm trying to understand the question actually. So if a coconut were a success,
Yes.
what would be the 3 layers?
So if you think about a
that would-
coconut, so a coconut has a shell as one layer, that's the outer layer. It also has an inner layer, and then inside that has the contents of the coconut. So if I was
Okay.
if that coconut was one whole coconut and that was defined as success, what would be
Okay.
the 3 layers for you that would make it a whole?
Okay. So I would say, coming back to what I was saying before, so resilience,
Yep.
that would probably be the outer layer. Because this is sort of the part where it's a bit harder, harsher.
Yep.
Then you get to the sweet part, and
Yes.
this is the curiosity. You
Yep.
want to dig deeper again, and you want to actually get to the juice. And then the last one would be, I have to choose. That's hard.
So the inner layer is the white part that you could eat.
Yeah, that's so I say like
You've got
first
the
layer is
coconut
the
juice.
soft layer is resilience. Then the white part that you can eat is the
Curiosity. Okay.
And then the juice, I would say, like if I can consider the juice like the,
Yes.
the nice part as well. And now I'm thinking about what would define success for me there. It's hard to choose, but I think I would say I think something that is super important that often is I would say not put enough into. I mean, it's sort of normal, but communication, just good communication skills. Being
Okay.
able to communicate well what you do, being able to sell well, being able to market well, being able to make connections, networking, to all of this is super important. It makes sense. It's just like super normal. I was hesitating to say this because it's so classic, but at the same time, I feel it's
Really
communication.
important.
Great communication skill is just what would define your success too.
Yeah.
If you have a good network, if you can market well, this is actually in anything you do, it will drive you to the right place.
I think they are perfect. They are perfect things to remember and to go by and to live life by. Resilience is the outer shell, which will keep you strong, tough, and get you through the tough times. Curiosity is the part that we eat and enjoy, and we want to keep going and asking for more and more. And the juice, and then good communication skills, because that is what is going to allow you to tell your story, to build your narrative, to market your product, to build good relationships with people, and to be able to just, have good conversations. I think those 3 aspects are super cool and so important. If you were going back and looking back at your younger self, Nico, what would you tell yourself to redo again? Would there be anything? You've done so much. You've gone from, Crestone to Atlassian to Avaloq to ANZ to Echo Tango to consulting in AI.
I often think about this question, and the first thing I would say is buy Bitcoin. No, I'm joking. No, the first thing
Are
I
you
would
really
say,
joking? Because I did that. It doesn't matter if the market falls.
No, I often think about, if I did change anything, I wouldn't be at the same place I'm at right now. And I think even though I had really difficult parts in my life, I think it what made me where I am, also go through the good times as well. And so I think I wouldn't want to change anything. So I wouldn't tell myself.
I love that. And don't live in regret, because your decisions are your decisions. Your life is your life. If you're living it today, then that's what you like to do, and move forward with that. That's so fantastic. Nico, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me on Thirstee Coconut. It's been a real pleasure talking to you and catching up with you as a friend.
Yeah, that was great. Next time, I would love to interview you as well. I don't know if I can have so many questions for you too.
You're allowed to do that. You let me know when you're ready. You're second in line, but you can be first in line if you get me first.
Soundstripe. 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 Soundstripe.